Ready? Here we go.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if this connected. And see if this connected.
What's up, fam? Again, the mission of this connected podcast is to connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way. To not necessarily agree, but be listened to. These conversations, of course, share the different perspectives of me and my guest. You, of course, as always, are welcome to agree and even disagree. But as always, we hope that it is done in charity. I'm Catholic.Dad, and welcome to this series that we have with my co-host for our monthly do of Whine with YAM. We have Tony right there. We have Catherine and Bethany, who is like spilling all of the wine all over her white stuff all over her room. So welcome to this episode, this monthly episode. So guys, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to whine about? This time around. Whoa! I almost spilt the wine all over the computer.
We're gonna whine about how y'all almost spilled the wine.
How you guys started without us?
We did. Yeah, I was waiting, and I'm like, I'm just gonna open this, but I'm gonna share with you guys the bottle that I got from this really fancy establishment that I passed by today called Stater Brothers. It's a California wine, I think. Robert Mondavi from his private selection. I picked a good year before COVID. It's California, 2018. So pre-COVID wine,
year.
right there. A Merlot, or as some would say, a Merlot. So that's what I have. What do you guys have?
Let me go get my bottle. Hold on.
Okay. I'll go. So while Catherine leaves, this is what Catherine gave me. It's barbecue. Yeah, it's barbecue. It's from the far off land of California. It's Zinfalil, and it's a great year, 2016. I was, a few years younger at that time, and it's red wood. And did I mention I'm a wine connoisseur? Right, I did mention that last. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I'm. That's what I'm drinking. It tastes, it tastes like some stuff. let's put it that way.
Does it taste like barbecue?
The way I do it, because I tend to burn my barbecue.
So it has a burnt taste.
Yes, it does.
Mine has a Merlot. It's dry. It has a really dry taste. Yeah, this is funny because we are obviously not wine connoisseurs, but we're trying. You know, we don't even know how to hold the glass. Do we hold it like this? Or we hold it with two fingers. The middle, the little finger. Do we? I don't know. But Bethany, what do you have?
I also have a Merlot from Sonoma Landing Vineyards. This is from 2005. So I was 10 years old. I couldn't even drink yet. I don't really know how to describe it. I just took my first sip. My desk actually tasted the wine before I did. So, yeah.
Oh, she got some aged wine. 2010. You know, they say that wine does get better with age, kind of like humans. So, Catherine,
too easy. I'm not gonna take that one.
All right, everyone. So, um, so this bottle of wine actually has a story. So you know how you go to the store and you find any little thing, especially at the 99-cent store. So I actually got this one at the 99-cent store just to try it. So this one is La Prensa 2020. So that means it's not that aged. Um, and it, like I said, I think I said from Chile, and it says here that this wine is supposed to be smooth and velvety. So, oh, la prensa, because la prensa means wine press in Spanish. So I think that's so cool. I got it just to try it, just to see, because usually the cheaper the wine, the lower the quality. So I'm hoping I'm not disappointed by spending a little bit. I think there's some wines that you can get decently priced. An interesting fact, wine here in the US is much cheaper than if you were to drink wine in other countries, depending which country you're in. But for example, if you're like in China or South Korea, I don't think they have wineries as much as they do here. So imported wines cost twice, sometimes even three times as much. So I'm grateful that we can share a glass of wine together, although we're not in the same room. But I think that's what makes our whining session so special.
That's right.
I have a question. Do you
Yeah,
guys think, because she said that's 2020, you said?
yeah, 2020.
So do you think it's gonna be to the point where kind of like how hotels don't have the 13th floor or something like that? That if anything that's like 2020 related, that's gonna be like the worst, like that's the unlucky number, that's the superstitious, like no, I don't want to touch that. AKA Catherine, how courageous are you with drinking that since it's 2020?
Oh, very courageous.
Oh,
Because 2020 in hindsight,
hindsight, right?
get it? Ah,
I do get it. I do. I heard that all through 2020. Oh
in
my gosh.
hindsight, 2020. It's
So funny.
But anyways, I feel like we have to say a disclaimer that because we do have people who listen who are underage, that this is responsible drinking. Obviously, we're at home, we're not going to be driving, and we are only simply drinking for the fun of pretending that we are wine connoisseurs. I think for a lot of us, I know I can speak for myself. I'm not quite a big drinker. It's like it's more like I have this glass of wine and then I have my glass of water to push it down with.
Yes. Oh, here's an interesting fact. When you are drinking wine, if you go wine tasting, for example, when you're old enough, of course, you don't really want to drink too much water unless you are done, only because water messes up the pH balance of your tongue and then you don't really get the full flavor of the wine. So that's why if you drink wine again after having a sip of
Okay with
water,
that.
it's so weird. Like, I didn't know that until someone explained it to me. And when they said that, I was like, no wonder the wine tastes so weird after I have a sip of water. So there's an interesting fact for you. Also,
It's better.
I don't know if we're ever going to go back to this, but if you go wine tasting, I know they have these things where you can spit out the wine so you don't have to drink it. That's what happened. Like, if you drink too much of those wine, you taste too much of that wine, it's so easy for you to, get a little intoxicated too fast, too soon. So another thing to watch out for. But yeah. And then what I like about these wines, and this is how you know if people know their wines well at the wineries. If they make recommendations of what to pair it with, then they know what they're talking about. And oftentimes they will recommend, like, if you're gonna drink this kind of wine, you want to pair it with this kind of meats or these kinds of foods, and it's really cool.
I always wanted to know that. Like
Yeah.
what goes with red, what goes with a Merlot, and I didn't know. I was like raiding the refrigerator to find some kind of cheese to eat it with, and all I could find was cotija cheese. And I'm like, maybe not. Um,
Oh, not for this one.
no,
I don't know if you look in the label of the back of the wine, sometimes they make recommendations to you. So this one says, enjoy with rosemary chicken or your favorite pasta.
hmm.
Yeah. Mhm. And last thing, when you take your first swig of wine, your first sip, swig it around your mouth so it could coat your mouth and then have a sip. And then you'll really know what the taste of the wine is really like.
Catherine, can I just say I am honestly impressed by the, by the knowledge that you hold about wine. That's quite impressive. Mine
Amazing.
mine says to pair with pasta with a red sauce, prime rib, and mild cheeses.
Ooh.
I did not know that. I just saw that. It says mine is pair with roasted chicken and pasta. And the smell is supposed to be cherry, ripe plum, cherry, ripe plum. And the taste is supposed to taste raspberry, cherry, and mocha.
Do you get the little mocha flavor or no?
I don't know. Let me try again.
Sip it right into the mic, Arno.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I like mine because it actually compliments me. It says, pat yourself on the back for choosing the perfect wine to enjoy with grilled meats and veggies. And I just,
Especially because the name of the bottle is barbecue.
No. Especially.
So I just tried mine. I'm not disappointed because for the price, I'm not surprised that it tastes a little flat, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. So that's a plus. But it doesn't have a really like strong flavor. I mean, it smells nice, but it feels kind of flat, like something's missing. But I guess you can't ask for more with $3.99, so I'm good. I'm not gonna complain. It's okay.
That's right. There's also different I guess different glasses, goblets or whatever
Yeah.
to use for the wine. I'm not sure. So maybe
Yeah.
in a future episode, maybe you could tell us what are we supposed to use.
Okay, so the ones you guys are holding are perfect for the red wine. So these are good for red wine. You want it a little wider, and you don't want to fill it up either because you need to give the wine room to breathe. Yeah, because then if you fill it up, I guess they won't really capture as much of flavor. The smaller wine glasses though are for the white wine because the white wine doesn't need as much room as the red wine. And the even smaller wine glasses are for dessert wines. Dessert wines are stronger than your average wine. They're sweet. And those, if we're already sipping on wine, right? With the dessert wines, you drink them even slower. You really take your time sipping them. Because if you try to drink it at the same pace as your wine, oh yeah, that you're just asking for trouble there. And the dessert wines, like I said, they're much stronger and they are sweeter. And usually those you just like sip slowly and alone. You usually don't pair those with anything because of the sweetness and how strong they are.
Now, I always thought dessert wine is you had wine with like a dessert with like cheesecake, or is it just the wine is the dessert?
I would
No,
say
with
the wine is
chocolate.
just a dessert, but sometimes, depending on the dessert wine, they may suggest like something like a cheesecake. But because that
with
wine is
chocolate.
already, or so like some bitter chocolate, because it's really sweet. And when I tell you it's sweet, it's very sweet. Like probably get a sugar overload before the alcohol hits you. You know.
I can't wait when we actually do this live at a round table where we have like the food that matches with it.
Yes.
That'd
Oh,
be
that would be
amazing,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
So
By the way, all this knowledge I have of wine has been because several years ago I actually did a wine tour in Napa, and these are the things that the people at the if you pay attention to the wine tours or if you get this kind of wine tour, they'll tell you these things. They'll tell you from like the process it takes to making the wine to when it's in the barrels, when it's taken out of the barrels, what wine to pair with what and all that stuff. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, and sometimes depending on the person giving the tour, they may even give you history of the wine or the winery or both. And it's all interesting. I don't know. That's why I think I have a newfound appreciation for wine. I don't love it because I think if I love it, that's dangerous. But I really enjoy a nice glass of wine.
I have a friend, shout out to Anna. We went to Congress one time and she loves wine. She just loves wine. She has to have a glass of wine before bed. and well, we were at Congress, and so we stepped out. We went to, we're at that hotel. We went downstairs at the bar, and we asked for a glass of wine. Well, wine at hotels are very expensive. I think it was like $18 a glass, and she was like, "What? We could have gone down to Vaughn's and bought 2 bottles."
Yes, that is so true.
It's expensive.
It is. Yeah. Oh,
Expensive.
that's the other thing. Wine, if you want good wine, it's not gonna come cheap. So sometimes there are some wines that are not that expensive that are still pretty good deals, like your friend was saying, you can get 2 bottles for that price of just one glass.
Yeah. So what's been going on with you guys? We haven't done this. This is about a month ago that we talked. So what's been going on? I have my signs. During the taping of this episode, it's that time of the year where we do the pro-life marches, and I put up this poster from last year. Just protect human life. It's one of my favorites. My daughter made it, and the reason why I love this one, we kept it, is because it has human, 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 and right here it says, this one's human. It's wearing the orange, so actually, they're in prison. They're human. This one is a person who is homeless, and they're human. And this one is an old person. They're human. And this one is there's nothing on this person. They're human. And then this person wearing pink, and then there's the belly, and there's a little baby inside, and says, that's human. And mom's human. And so it says, protect human life. Human. So love that one. I was hoping we were going to be able to bring that one again this year, but everything is virtual. So today, actually, and we're recording this, today is the day prayer for the protection of the unborn child. So hopefully, people will really look at that and see the sanctity of life from conception all the way to death. So now that I've totally depressed everyone, let's have another drink. To the unborn. There you go. So how about you guys?
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was thinking, I don't know if any of you have ever read this book called The Giver. I think it's by Lewis Lowry, and I think several years ago it got made into a feature film with I can't remember the actress's name, but the reason I bring up The Giver, because The Giver is a fictionalized story about a very super utopian society. I mean, they give you pills to basically control your urges to really be a full-on human being. And there comes a point where you retire, and I forgot what they called that world, the unknown you go into. Basically, when you retire, they're basically killing you off. Like, you go through this cycle of life with them, and surviving or living, and then they decide the end of your life,
Yeah.
And even though, like, I know when we think about human life and the sanctity of life, I think it's easy to think about babies, but it's more than just the babies. I mean, of course, we stand up for them and everything. Yes, we're all for life, especially for unborn children. But I think something that gets often overlooked is that we as Catholics, we're talking about all human life, being against the death penalty, not ending someone's life early, or what is it? Not euthanasia. What is it called? Assisted suicide, right? Because we believe in natural life. Like, you come naturally and you die naturally as well, or if that's for you, that happens. But I think The Giver is very poignant of that, how someone else gets to decide if you live or die. And even with babies, like, let's say there in the story there was these 2 babies born at the same time, twins, right? Well, the one that weighed less was the one that was gonna get killed off. And when the main character figured that out, he decided to run away with this baby, and saved its life. And I think the irony with this baby is that the baby's name is Gabriel. Some people say that it's kind of alluding into kind of like the angel Gabriel. I forgot what the connection was, but I was like, wow, that's so interesting. But yeah, kind of like, I don't know. I just feel that when we don't stand up enough for human life, I almost feels like we could easily go into that direction. I mean, that's an extreme of things that can happen, but when you give something too much control and autonomy over you, that's what you're doing. You're slowly giving up your right to be able to be self autonomous and to really live out that freedom that God gave us to use responsibly.
Yeah, and personally, I think that we are really close to that. If not, we're already in that where people are already making that decision. Uh, with people who have Down syndrome,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard where parents are told by their physician, well, this person will have Down syndrome, and people choose to abort because they don't want to have to go through that. Uh, I know that I've known some people whose doctors have told them life's going to be really hard. Do you really want that? And so it's a way of telling them that, hey, you know what, you don't want to suffer, and this person is going to make you suffer. And then you go on Instagram, you see such the most beautiful people. There's this one guy who's doing triathlons, uh, and I follow him, and he's the guy's massive, and he's doing things.
Mhm.
And from the people who had who have Down syndrome, who I worked with, are leading such productive lives. And yes, there are people who are having difficulties, and we
Yeah,
can't ignore that. But um, how are we to decide? I mean, who's to decide that? Yeah.
it was, I've always wondered that because I had someone who kind of posed that question, and I was like, at the time I was like, oh, I don't know, and I think that's very difficult, like you said, Arnell, like, but at the same time, I always come back to this, like, who are we to play God? We're not God. We're humans. We're his beloved children. And why should I decide if someone lives or dies? That's not up to me.
At those marches, you guys have gone to those pro-life marches, right? You see a lot more and more of I always look at that, and whenever I go to those marches, you see like the young people, the high school students. Some of them are confirmation students who got dragged to go, or or were convicted to go because they're going to get community service hours for going.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that's not the only reason why they go. And then you see old people, and I always try to see how many are the young adults. Are the young adults going? And what I saw there in the last two that we went to was that there were a lot of young adults who were on the train with us, but they were going to the women's march. So I'm like, okay, well, there is definitely, um, for me as a parent, a concern there. But hopefully, we as a nation, we um, a faith community, will look at these things and say, what are we doing? That book that you talked about, The Giver. Who's to decide? You know, I mean, if there was a in that case, if we were, say, the committee that decided, who lives and who doesn't live, uh, what is the criteria that we have to take on? You know, it's
Yeah, man, that's such a difficult question. And I think also, I just remembered right now, there's one of the roles, because of this utopian society, you get assigned basically your role in the society. Some people are chosen to be mothers, so that's how people are made in this, utopian society. But obviously those mothers, they don't get to keep their kids because their kids are given to families that were already chosen to raise these children within the society. And apparently, the women who birth these kids, while they don't talk about it, they're not the same. You can see like their sadness being described like something was taken from them, and that something was that child, you know? And I
You know
just
what
think
was
that's
you know
sad.
what's the trip? I studied in the Philippines,
Mhm.
and back in the day, in the Philippines, in order to go to college, you had to take the national college entrance exam, and depending on how you score, would mean what you can take or what you can do. Isn't that crazy? It's like, so if you score, if you wanted to be a doctor but you don't score high enough in the sciences, or you don't score high enough, um, most people won't pick you up because, well, you're not gonna succeed in that anyway. So, take business or something like that. But I thought that only happened in the Philippines. And then, um, shout out to Anthony, who's in Greece. The person I was talking to in Greece. He said that college, university is free in Greece. In most European countries, it's free. You take the test, and if you pass, then you get to go. But you get to go depending on, again, how you score. So, and I'm like, so you actually don't have the freedom to be anything that you want to be. It's how you score, if you would be able to succeed in that. So I'd have to talk to him more about that. But I found that super interesting. Um, that
You know what's so crazy too? I don't know if other European countries are like this, but I know in England, once you decide on a major, you cannot change it. If you try to change it, it's really hard to change it. So at 18 years old, they are demanding that you choose something and that's it. You cannot change it. I think that's so scary because what you think you want at 18 could very well change by the time you're 21, 22, and you realize like, I think I want to go down a different career path, you know? I want to do something different. I mean, if you look back when we were undergrads, if we did our undergraduate studies here, maybe some of us changed our major. We didn't graduate with what we started with, you know?
Do
And
you
then
guys think that's an American thing?
I think so. Because it seems like other countries, like, that's it. Here it is.
Because when I went to school in the Philippines, you went to the college of this, you went to the college of nursing, you went to the college of architecture, you went to the college of dentistry, you went to the college of engineering, and all your classes were in blocks. So in one semester, you took all these classes, and so everybody just basically took blocks of classes to get you out of there in 4 years. You didn't, if you were in the college of nursing, you didn't see anybody else but nursing students. So
Yeah, I think it's more of the way that our education system is structured here in America, you know, because we are okay, I should know this because I used to teach on this, but I forgot already. Why our system is structured the way it is. Well, first of all, we were structured in a way where it would benefit companies, so that way we could create pump out workers, you know, and only a few people at the top. That's why our models of education have changed over the years, but initially it was one of those like you give and they take, and that's that, and not really so much like, I guess, analysis or questioning. But now that's changing slowly but surely. um and we were also, another consideration was that they really wanted students to have the classics. What do I mean by the classics? We'll have like study some type of language. Back in the day, I think it used to be Latin, then take a course in history, take some reading and writing course, and then also I think mathematics. There was a time where science wasn't such a big push, but then when we had that Cold War with Russia or the USSR, there was a huge push for science and astronomy and being the first to get to the moon or something like that. And so I think that's why you would meet other people from other majors, for example, like at universities, because you had to take those general education classes, which, by the way, if we could get away from doing that, I think that would be better, because I felt like some of those things were just like a waste of time, you know? Maybe I did learn a thing or two, but gosh, it was so annoying because I really didn't start enjoying my education until I started getting into the nitty gritty of my major. I was like, yes, I love this. Where's my next class, you know? Whereas if it was a GE, a science GE, I would just rub my head like, oh Lord, I don't like science, but I need to pull through. I need to push through because I need this to graduate, you know?
So anyways, hey,
Preach.
you guys have any other topics you guys want to talk about? Something that's important to you, that's tugging at you to come share, to whine about? Look, Catherine's already done with her first class. She downed that puppy.
Don't we have a jar filled with?
We do.
Oh, that's what a coincidence! It's crazy.
Is that what you were going to say, Tony?
Got to pull from the jar.
Yeah.
All right, let's pull from the bottom of the jar. I got to replenish this jar. Okay, this one, it says, oh, this one's on music. I don't know why I wrote this. Music, heavy metal, BTS, Juice WRLD. When did we talk about this?
I remember you were talking about children idolizing Juice WRLD. And then we started, I think I brought up heavy metal, and then we started talking about BTS. And so I think that's where that conversation went. Because we started talking about how, you know, back in the 80s, you know, rock artists were idolized. You know, not so much now, but back then, you know, I mean, that world was just filled with drugs, right? I mean, never mind. Edit it out if you want, but like it was drug, sex, and rock and roll, right?
Right.
Back then, but now our culture has shifted, and now we kind of idolize like pop artists and hip hop, rap, and so I think with Juice WRLD, someone refreshed my memory because I don't follow up with that genre very much. How did he pass away? It was a sudden death, correct?
It was a drug overdose.
It's a drug overdose, yeah. But to me, and it's just throughout the history of music, we tend to idolize these people, but we need to bring attention to the addictions that run rampant in a lot of in a lot of artists' lives, you know. So he was very talented, Juice WRLD, but we need to talk to our youth that, look, you know, this is sorry. Tony said the sudden death of rapper Juice WRLD as he landed in Chicago last month was caused by an accidental overdose of codeine and oxycodone. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay. So, what was I saying? Edit this out, please.
We're going to leave it all in. There's no editing in this podcast. You should know that. There's no editing. Nothing.
And no budget.
And no budget. So, by the way, if you are listening to this podcast and you really want to support this podcast, you know, go check our link on that Patreon. Become a patron, and so that maybe one day we'll be able to edit and put on some editing sound.
Tell Tony to edit. Come on, Tony, you can do it.
What? What? Keep all this in. Keep all this in. That's what I heard. Yes, I will keep this in.
We keep it all in.
For the record, Tony will edit, right?
Or if not, if he doesn't edit, he's gonna rap. Like
yeah,
Juice WRLD.
Like Juice WRLD. You'll be popular with all the kids, Tony.
That's right.
The rapping, polo wearing youth minister.
Oh
right?
my gosh, this is going so well.
For the record, I'm not a youth minister. I'm a young adult minister. Just thought I'd put that out there.
Oh, you're trying to take my thing. I should have trademarked it.
And
Polo wearing young adult minister? Nah, it doesn't have a good ring to it. Polo wearing youth.
Oh my gosh.
Polo wearing youth minister. Beautiful. Beautiful sound.
I think it's so true what you said, Bethany, about Juice World and other artists too. It's so easy to idolize them and not keep those addictions in check. Because then when we think of the word addiction, we think of, drugs or alcohol, right? But we don't stop to think that maybe we are addicted to our phones. We're addicted to social media, or we're addicted to other things. Um, and honestly, I think maybe some of these artists might not care, but then maybe there are those that care enough to kind of sort of call you out on it and say, hey, you need to go do something else. Like, don't just focus on us. Like, go do better for yourself. And I say that because some of the BTS members have actually called people out on them. Go do something better for yourself. Don't just focus on us. Like, we love you, mwah, but you need to do better for yourself too. That's why we exist. We exist because we want to inspire people to love themselves so that they can live good lives. What's the use of living a good life if you're not out there doing whatever that might mean for you?
Now, BTS is a Korean group, right?
Yes.
Now, that always confused me because,
Mhm.
you know, they're singing Korean.
Mhm.
So you don't understand what they're saying.
Mm.
So is it just the beat, or the sound,
We always get that as
or
honor.
are there subtitles?
All right. So I guess I'll give you a little I didn't always know what they were saying, but something in me always knew like that it wasn't bad, that it was different. I just didn't know how. So I started looking up the lyrics. What does it mean? Like, so I would look at the translated version of the lyrics. By the way, translations never do the lyrics actual justice as to what they really mean. Because you know how maybe this happens too in Tagalog. I know it definitely happens in Spanish. When you translate something from, let's say, Spanish to English, I feel like English sometimes robs that essence of the Spanish. It's like something, because some things you just cannot translate. So it's the same thing with this. So when I started looking at their lyrics, I started seeing that, for example, in a lot of their songs, yeah, some songs they would talk about love, but then there was other ones where they would kind of like push the limits or boundaries and really question their own Korean society. Like, oh, I'm supposed to have a dream. I'm supposed to work hard for this dream, man. What dream? Like that was like their first song, No More Dream. That's what in essence it was about. I know I don't have it all right. So before any armies come after me, don't. And then as the years went by, you started seeing how they were transitioning into like, this teenage angst into finally like, the realization like, some things will last and some things don't. Sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're blue, and sometimes you're just happy. And one of those songs that comes to mind about sadness is, I don't know the Korean name. I know the song it has a Korean name, but the English translation for that song is called Spring Day. The first time I heard Spring Day, there was something about that song. I don't know what it was. It was sad. I could feel the sadness. I was like, oh, I'm like, I feel so sad. Like, why? So basically, like the first line of the song is Bogo Shipta. Bogo Shipta means I miss you. So they're talking in essence about missing something or someone. And they're not very direct as to what that is, but you can kind of surmise like it's talking about losing something, the loss of something, the loss that all of us go through. And the only thing that can help us get through that winter, that coldness of that loss, is knowing that we have the hope of a new day coming in the form of a new spring day. Spring is coming soon. And that's one thing that would always tell, their fans, like, your spring day will come. Don't just wait on it. Your spring will come. And I think when we translate that into our faith, I think that's so true. Like, we get so desperate, over the loss or over the anger, whatever that is, that we forget that God is still God of hope and he's very faithful and he's going to deliver on that spring day for us, and that hope. And so I think that's why they have so many followers. I know there's been several people who've come out and said when they first heard BTS, they were going through really, really hard time. And had it not been for the hearing BTS and knowing more about them and what they stood for, they're not sure if they would be alive today, because some of these people were actually planning to commit suicide Like that day
Wow.
they heard of BTS and they said, BTS saved my life. Had I not heard them, I don't know if I would be alive today. And I think that's such a powerful statement to make. You're like, whoa, Um, and because of that, I've been able to meet other people, um, impact, you don't realize the kind of impact people can have on you and you on them. But I'm so grateful because BTS to me is more than just music. It's a movement. It's something that inspires you, empowers you, but at the same time reminds you to stay grounded and stay true to who you are. And so whatever that trueness or realness is to you, then stick to that. And for me, it's my faith.
You know so much about this.
Yes, that's why I'm like, oh, you just opened a can of worms.
Tony can pass as BTS if he shaves
What does that even mean?
and puts on, those really loud colored clothes.
Let me guess, BTS raps. Is that what I'm hearing?
They
Yep.
do rap.
Oh,
Oh, what a surprise.
They do rap.
So I want to pull another one out of this box, out of this jar. This one says, having children into this world. Wait, did we talk about that?
I don't remember that.
I think I put this one in here. Maybe, I think because I heard someone talking about this on somewhere, and it said that young people, young adults are choosing not to have children because one, because the world is in such turmoil that they didn't want to bring children into this world. Is that something that you guys have, like your friends or people, young adults, are choosing not to do, or putting off having children because of one reason or another? But that just struck me. I don't know who I heard this from, but it said the person said that they question bringing children into this world because the world basically sucks. So why would they want to bring children into this world? So let's whine on that.
I don't know if, as far as that, what I will say for a mentality of this generation is, which is kind of crazy because something just happened a few days ago. I had a conversation with a young person, like 18, 19, and we were talking, and she was saying like, we were just having a conversation of like, she was talking about her future and that sort of thing, and I was saying like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of moving out and that sort of thing. And then she says at one point, oh, did you want to move out with someone, or did you want to move out, find a roommate or whatever? And I said, yeah, I was thinking of finding a roommate. And she goes, well, why would you need to find a roommate if you have a girlfriend? And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, you could just live with your girlfriend. And I was like, and this is someone that's Catholic, and I'm like, no, you can't. Like they don't even know that. There's a mentality of like, oh, everyone lives together, so that should be fine. Like that's a social norm. So to that point, I know that's become like, doesn't even bat your eyes. And to further that point, I know those that have lived together for many, many years, they aren't having kids. I've never actually had a conversation as to why, but that could be it. That could be, is like, why would I, especially with the world right now? I don't know. That's a very interesting question.
Do you guys think it's a fear of responsibility? Because I
Could be.
have people I know that choose to have fur babies. I'm sorry if this offends people, but I hate that word, fur babies. They're fur pets. They're pets.
Oh.
They're not babies. So they're couples who have birthday parties for their fur babies, and one or the other, maybe inability to have children, or just saying, we're not ready, or we're not willing to put a child into this world. So um, the way I see that is, there is this need to care for a being, and they're choosing to care for pets instead. Having them in strollers and baby clothes and things like that. So you think it's like is it a fear of responsibility to have to, a fear of permanency, um, or a fear of I don't want it to be like my parents' marriage or something like that, or I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. And then yet you still are fulfilling that desire by doing like the little parties and stuff. You still get that little, I don't know, fix, or however you want to word it. Um, and yet without having the commitment, I don't know.
I think it really depends. I know I've had conversations with friends. I've had some who wanted to have kids and actually have kids, or are on their journey. Like one friend, she's about to have her first child in a few weeks. Yeah, like in less than a month,
Mhm.
or any day now, really. Um, and then I have another one who actually I met when I was in China. And she said to us that she didn't want to have kids. She just never didn't want to. And she was married at some point, and she didn't want to have kids, you know. And I think for her it was more of, not that she was afraid of that they were an inconvenience. She's like, no, I don't want to have kids. You know, that doesn't mean I don't like being around them. I just don't want them, you know. And she's
Yeah.
kind of one of those people that likes to she likes to travel a lot. She likes to be out and about, you know. In fact, what I think is kind of interesting is that her mom didn't want to have kids, and she told her dad, her mom told her dad, if if I'm meant to get pregnant, I'm gonna get pregnant within this 1 year that I come off birth control, and that's how my friend was made. That's how she came about into existence.
Mm.
Had that not happened, I don't know if my friend would have ever been born. You know, and then I think also what influences people, it can be the fear of the world, the fear of responsibility, fear of commitment. But I think it's also like some people experience so much bad trauma in their childhood, they're afraid of passing that on to their kids.
Mm.
And so rather than risking that, they choose to forego it altogether.
Yeah. Bethany, you were going to say something.
Catherine reads my mind, so she said everything that I wanted to say. Yes, you did, girl.
Yeah, that's true. But the crazy thing here is, I think our parents, and my parents, and people of older generations, they had the same. They had traumas as well of going through things, but they still had kids. They still had the dream of having a house, uh, two kids, and a car in the garage, and a pet. Uh, that things have changed. Um, and is it because when my grandparents, during that time, there was no contraception, so they had kids, and you know now there is, and there's contraception, and there's abortion, and so
I think for me personally, and I'll just share this personally. I don't know if anybody else shares this, but for me, growing up, I didn't want to have children. At first, it was because I was discerning whether I wanted to enter religious life. But when I decided that that wasn't for me, um, it's honestly my reluctance to have children is because I get so afraid, that I'm going to be inadequate. And I do have those fears, especially because I work with so many children, and I work with especially a high needs population. And I look at these parents and I'm just like, wow, I admire you so much. I mean, I work with such incredible parents, and I make sure that I praise them because I truly do admire them because they're just so phenomenal what they do with their children. But for me, I have to self reflect, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, even with my own mom, my mom worked a full-time job and she homeschooled her children, and I'm just like, wow, she is such a superhero. In my eyes, I said, I don't know if I can do that. And so it's just, for me personally, it's a sense of inadequacy, and that's why I fear having children. I don't know, I'm just sharing that just in case someone else can relate, please.
Preach.
Yes, I'm still on the fence about having kids. I will admit that, even though I'm called into the vocation of marriage, I'm still on the fence about it. I'm like, God, I'm not sold on the children part yet. So if I have the kids, they will be, I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't think anything's wrong with me. I think I will be able to have kids, but um yeah, I don't know. Like Bethany was saying, it's this sense of inadequacy, not being good enough to be a parent, and then being afraid of passing on. And it's so funny you mentioned that now, because my dad and I, we often have this conversation, like how things were different when he was growing up and why him and my mom got married so young. I guess back then that was the norm, like there was this sense of expectation, like you got married when you were young. Their parents got married when they were young, and so did they. My dad said that, and if looking back, he's like, I don't regret having kids, but maybe I could have waited. I could have waited a little bit longer before having them, maybe better establishing myself so we wouldn't struggle as much, because he said that the first few years of their marriage, they struggled with a lot of things, especially finances. So that's the aspect that he wishes he could have gone back maybe and tried to change a bit.
Wow. And here I am. I'm like, man, I should have started earlier. Because it's like, for me, it's I love having, my wish was that we would have had more children, because I really do believe that they are God's gift. They teach you so much, and as you get older and you can't have anymore, that's it saddens me. It's like, wow, I miss having the babies.
Another reason why I think some people don't want to have kids, and I personally know a couple people that are close to me, they don't want to have children in the future because they're afraid of passing on an illness to their kids. And this illness, unfortunately, is one of those that can be genetically passed. So there is a chance that their kids might carry some of this stuff they have, and it's quite debilitating. So this individual, for example, I'm not sure what exactly is going on with their bodies, but I know they had to get a shunt put in at a very young age. They get these horrible headaches. They have no control over it. And they almost had, I guess you can say, a brain hemorrhage, but because of the shunt they put in, nothing happened. But this person is basically on disability the rest of their life. They still function like a normal human being, but there's certain things like getting a driver's license. That's something that this
Mhm.
person cannot do because of their history with seizures. So that's another thing. Like, that's a huge concern for them. As much as they would want to, they're afraid of that.
Wow.
So, in response to that, I understand. And I think what I'm going to talk about is more regarding pathology. I remember back in grad school, we had to do a genogram. And so essentially what that is, it's like a large family tree, but you have to track your family's pathology. So like you have to say, oh, this person had an addiction or suffers from depression, bipolar disorder, this person was incarcerated, stuff like that. And so essentially what you find out when you look at all of your classmates genograms, it's like, wow, everybody, there's no escaping it. And of course, there are environmental factors as well that goes into triggering whether someone exhibits depression or bipolar disorder, right? Because you can carry that gene, but
Mhm.
not necessarily exhibit that. But there's really no escaping that. Everybody carries something. And sorry, this is probably really random, but I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about earlier about being pro life and people wanting to abort their babies because the doctor says that, oh, they're going to have a disability. They said that about my sister. And, you know, and, they said, you should have, you should probably abort her, and, my mom fought, she's like, no, I'm not going to abort her, because you imagine if she had, like, my sister's so precious to me, and I have a beautiful niece now because of her, and my sister's like my best friend. And so when I hear that, it's like, no, and working with the population that I do, I'm like, these kids are so beautiful. Why would you want to abort them? They're so beautiful. And you know what? Typically developing children cause their parents problems too. Like, I know people who, like, they're typically developing and they cause their parents mayhem. Like, but why are you saying that because this child has Down syndrome or has severe autism, like that their life isn't worth living? Because those children teach you a different type of love. And we have a very close friend whose little sister has Down syndrome. And I mean, that baby is so beautiful. And oh my gosh, I mean, you see her smile and you just melt. You're just like, can I just hold you and just love you for the rest of your life? And I don't know, it's just saddening. And, and I think about the story of my sister and I'm just like, no, like, I'm so happy my mom chose not to abort her and she fought to not abort her, And so these children, they're an absolute blessing to our lives. So sorry to cry.
Oh, it's okay. You know what? I don't know if we're thinking of the same baby, but if it's the same one, I like that post they put of her eating a Cheeto. I don't know why that's so cute. Like it's so like, oh, what is this? I can eat this. Num num num. It's just and like you said, like I think it's so important to remember that they teach you a different type of love. You know, it's different. And I remember there was this girl, actually, I don't know if you remember, the family used to go to the Spanish mass, but I haven't seen them in a while. The girl is on she can't function on her own, so she always needs assistance. And so she was always like on the wheelchair, but I just thought it was so funny how sometimes like you could feel or hear the girl responding,
Mhm.
And one of my choir mates, she's like, oh, you could tell she was happy today, by the noises that she was making. And at the time I didn't really understand it, but looking back, talking about this life, it's just, oh my gosh, that's so true. That her life was still just as special as anyone else's, you
Mhm.
know? And her parents were caring for her, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing ever. Is it easy to care for someone who depends on you? Maybe not. But these parents, I know, always took care of her, and so did her siblings. They were always like looking out for her. And I just thought it was just a beautiful love.
Yeah. You know what? Um, my career for about 15 years was taking care of the developmentally disabled when California used to have these large institutions, um, where 1,000, 1,500 individuals live there. That was their place where they lived. Um, and I loved that place. It was a city within a city, um, and it was protected, um, where no one judged them and they walked around, they worked, and it was their home. Uh, but the first time I walked in there, it was a culture shock. I was like, wow, there's people with hydrocephaly, with massive heads. Um, that's about 3.5 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, and never seen that before. uh, and people with microcephaly, and the typical things that people think of disabilities is Down syndrome and autism. There's so much more that was out there, and you saw everyone, and um, everyone was the same. Everyone was a person, and I love that about them, because they just treated each other as well, that was the normal. Um, you know, on a side note, they did have a hierarchy, and even people with disabilities will have hierarchies of who's superior to one person. Who's this was a terminology that they use: someone who was high grade and someone who was low grade, um, and that was taught. That was taught by people like us, and so I always believe that racism and prejudice is an environmental thing, that we were not born to be racist and to be prejudiced, but we learned that from our environment. We need to do better with that. We need to teach not to hate and teach how to love. And I saw so much of that at these facilities that I worked at. And if it didn't close, man, I would still be living there. You guys would be taking tours over there with me and probably hanging out, because when my daughters were children, they would never say that I went to work. They'd say, "Oh, Dad, are you leaving to go visit with your friends?" Because that's where I went. And, I love the fact that you got to go to work in shorts and tank tops, because you're going to their home, and you dress as normal as possible. So I love that, and I love your story, Bethany, and the fact that people with disabilities bring forth a special gift. It's compassion. Uh, it's so much more of a gift to you than you are to them. They are so much more a gift to you than you are to them. Um, a story of individual that I took care of. She only spoke with her eyes. Blink. Look to the left, look to the right, and for someone who did not have the patience to wait on a speech board, is it an A? And you'd wait for the yes, no, and to form a sentence, it'd take you a super long time. And she ended up with cancer, and it was painful. And I just remembered her brother, who never visited, the family who never visited, after she passed, said she is so much better off now, because what kind of life could she have had? And I was like, and I remember my manager pulling me aside and says, "Don't," because I was ready to take that guy's head off. Because if you only knew her life, if you only knew how many people she touched, if you only knew the quality of the life that she led. And I think that's the thing in our society, is the quality of the life that we think we need or we deserve or what we should have is like so material. And for the people that I took care of, the quality of the life that they had is, how many friends did I make today? You know, and I had taught that to my kids growing up. I would tell them, okay, today, make one new friend. You have to make one new friend, because that's what they taught me. Is they would just go out and they would make a friend and come home and say, "Mr. Arnaud, I met a friend today. I made a friend," and it would be the same friend, but they made another friend, different day, and it just teaches you how to be more human. You know, how to be Christ-like. I miss that place. You for the people who work there, there's a place called Lanterman Developmental Center in Pomona and Diamond Bar. We still all reminisce about that place. The 4th of July fireworks parade, we would have a parade, and every year we would have a parade and fireworks show, and changing gigantic adult diapers, and Yeah, it's like so many stories of that. But for people who fear having children because they might have that, I mean, it's, I guess it's a personal decision. I've never had that cross to bear, but I just have to say, every time I reflect on what we want is perfection. We want is perfection. We want the perfect house. We want the perfect marriage. We want the perfect everything. It's never going to be perfect. And if we look at the history of of the Nazis who wanted to make perfect people,
Mhm.
where they terminated human beings, the disabled, the people with addictions. And the crazy thing is, um, if you had a child who was disabled, well, guess what happens? The mother gets, basically, she gets sterilized. And the crazy thing is, people think that happened in Nazi Germany only. That happened in the United States, right here, San Bernardino, in the state hospitals. And that wasn't because you were uh, mentally ill. It was because that your husband placed you in a facility because you were being a difficult wife, and so you were sterilized without permission, or you were an alcoholic and you were sterilized. So it's, and the Margaret Sanger of the world, the one who started Planned Parenthood. She's looked upon as some great person. Well, her intentions were, to me, my opinion, I think it's true. Her her ideas were evil, you know, to abort um, African Americans and people of color because they were not worthy. You know, um, I think we have to look at that, um, where people who have disabilities make the world more perfect and not less perfect. If everyone was perfect, then again there would be no perfection. I mean, the beauty, I think, in God's creation is that we are all made in His image differently. I mean, the variety. I mean, just looking right here. I mean, just look at this, all beautiful. Just kidding, but I'm gonna rant on and on about developmental disabilities. It's my passion. Um, if I was one time thinking of starting a group home, but the one thing that prevented me was not that I couldn't do it, was because I could not go through having a client pass away, because that's a family member. When I was working at Lanterman and I was a manager of my own unit, I had 10 clients pass, and it was just so hard. It's almost losing um, someone in your own family every single time. And my unit was the elderly unit, so they're all in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So they were sent there to have a good moment to go along, move along, and you know they were going to pass. And so yeah, you get so attached, so close, because you are their family. So
I actually had a student. I did his assessment earlier this academic year, and I was just looking through a random file. I was looking for another student, and I found out that student that I assessed actually passed away. He was in a car accident at 2 years old, and so I mean he was essentially in a vegetative state for the remainder of his life, and that hurt. Like I started crying
Mhm.
You know, I was like, oh my gosh, because you feel for those parents too, you
Here's
know.
here's a crazy thing. I went to school in Roland High School, and Lanterman Developmental Center is just the city nearby. And I was working on a unit. I floated. This was when I was still working on the floor, and I floated, and I passed by um, this lady, and she said, "I know you," and I was like, "I know you," and she said, her son was there, and I'm like, "He works here too," and she said, "No, he's one of the clients." I'm like, "What?" Well, what happened was that he got in a car accident, and for some of us, we thought that they moved, and because he was in a car accident and he ended up being disabled before he turned 18, it was still considered a developmental disability. So he could stay at a facility like that. And so that was one of the most traumatic things for me, was to see a high school friend, and now you're caring for that person, and that person could still communicate, uh, uh, and still remember, but trapped inside of this body that's now disabled. So I know that we're drinking, so maybe that's a note that maybe responsible drinking is something that everyone should, because that was the reason why he was at that hospital, is because of an accident. So responsible drinking, things like that can happen. Um, but I never worked that floor again, because I couldn't. I was like, I said, please don't float me over to that unit, um, because it just brought back really really strong memories and guilt. You know, we always fall into guilt. How come I never knew? Why didn't I visit? Things like that. But anyways, man, this is a depressing episode.
No, it's all good. Hey, this is what being human
This,
is
this
called.
is what happens when you have too much wine.
That too. No, I was gonna mention how, and now you mentioned the whole guilt factor. For there was a time where I felt guilty for not wanting to have kids because there was people around me who wanted to have children so bad they just couldn't, you know. And I remember once I'm like, God, I'm so healthy. I wish I could give them my what I think I might have good fertility. I don't know. I don't, I guess I won't know until the time comes. I wish I could give that to them so that they could have kids. But then I stopped to think, God always has plans for people. And though I wish them well and I would want this for them, maybe that's not what he wants for them, because maybe he chose them for something else. And
Yeah.
for this particular group of friends, God chose them to be parents in another way. They actually ended up adopting two beautiful children, and I was blessed to be at one of the adoptions, like one of the final adoption where they went in front of a judge. They went before a judge, signed off the paperwork, and made it official. And to me, that was so endearing and touching because they came a long way, and so did this child they adopted. They will never really know what happened to their child prior to them adopting them, but they know that she went through some very traumatic things. Again, they
Yeah.
just don't know exactly what. But I just think that that is so beautiful of them to say yes in that way to being parents. It hasn't been easy, but I see them and I admire them so much for their perseverance and for them not giving up. And even though it's hard and sometimes they struggle, they made it happen. And I love seeing the joy that comes from that family.
Yeah. My sister couldn't have kids. I have a couple of sisters, and I remember when Dana, my oldest, was born. Um, there's a long story to that, but my one sister was the only one who could make it. She had to pick up my mom, who came with us, and my mom was diabetic but forgot her meds, so my sister had to come fetch her. And so by the time that she got there, Dana was already born, and we're looking at the nursery, and here's my sister who who wasn't joking, and with and just, if you know my sister Faye, she's just so timid. She says, you know, she's looking at the window and she says, um, "Can I have her?" And I looked at her and was like, "Are you insane?" Um, but she just says, "I wish I could have her. Can I have her?" And but yeah, it's like this. There's this yearning for a child, and you can't. Um, and so she's everyone's godmother. Yeah. I told her she can have her when she goes to college, and now she's in college, she can have her. So I just think that there needs to be more children in the world. I truly believe that the world is in a state that it's in because there's not enough kids.
You
'Cause
know, it's funny you say that because I don't know how much you obviously I follow this kind of thing because I'm really a lot into different types of cultures from Asia, particularly South Korea. But there's been reports that the populations in places like Japan and South Korea are aging because people are getting older, but
Mhm.
they're not having as many children as people get older as they used to before. And I guess in the 50s, like after the Korean War, for whatever reason, again, the influence of the US put it in their minds that maybe they should sterilize willingly. And that's what happened in the 50s in South Korea. A lot of people got sterilized. They couldn't have kids. Um, and I thought that was interesting because you would think like, oh, they should, have kids, especially after a war. But no, that it was quite the opposite. So now, like, you have a lot of young people, for whatever reason, don't want to have children. And I could kind of start seeing that happen here, but in a different way. Maybe not in the same way. And I just feel like our society encourages like to kind of do whatever we want, follow whatever our hearts desire. If our hearts desire is not to have children, then that's okay, you know? But I think at the same time, I think we should also be mindful when we ask the question of married couples. Oh, why don't you have kids?
Yeah,
Because you might not know the story behind that. Like, what if they wanted to have kids and you asking them is just another triggering reminder of why they can't because they just can't or whatever else is going on with them.
that's so true. Wow. I want more kids.
You want a loud house, Arnell? Because we have that here at this house. There's four of us, but it sounds like 20 or 50 people sometimes.
I grew up with a family of 9, so it was never quiet. And then my best friend, uh, he was an only child, and it was so quiet in their house. And funny thing is, he always wanted to come to our house, and I just wanted to go to his house because it was quiet. And I'm like, man, you're the only one, and you get to watch TV. And like at my house, it's like you don't get to watch TV. It's like the older kids get to watch TV, and you get to sit there and watch what they want to watch. Uh,
And if you ever want to watch what you want to watch, it turns into this big old fighting match.
yeah, yep. That's that's the beauty of large families. Um, Many stories to tell.
I will say, my siblings and I, even though there's four of us, doesn't compare to a big family. By the way, my dad, he did come from a big family. He came from 12 kids.
Wow.
And my mom was only two, but that was because I heard that it was really difficult for my grandmother to get pregnant. And so for her to have those two kids, it was a miracle, kind of. So and for my mom to say, I want four kids. She always said that. Why? I don't know. I want four kids, two boys and two girls. And even though sometimes we don't see eye to eye on everything, I love that at the end of the day, we can still laugh and poke fun at each other. We roast each other. I'm usually the subject of the roastings because I am, when it comes to jokes, I'm the last one to get it, and it takes me hours to laugh about it. They're like, oh, Kathy, she's so smart, you know. But they say they're more creative with their choice of words than what they call me. But I'm like, shut up.
They haven't met Tony.
No, they have not.
You guys, all right. I totally just stabbed myself with this corkscrew. So
You need a band-aid?
I'm okay, but like that's not something you should play with. So
On that note, I think we should end this because, people are starting to bleed.
Or no, I just want to say that when you were talking about the sterilizations that they force people to endure, I read something about it, but I don't remember where many years ago, but it made me pick up this book. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's
The
called
New
The New
Jim
Jim
Crow.
Crow by Michelle Alexander. I really recommend it because it sheds light on this book particularly focuses on the rates of incarceration of Black people or African Americans in comparison to other people of color or even whites, and how people of different races and ethnicities can commit the same crime, yet it's always the Black person that gets more time for the crime. So I feel like this sheds light on the history of it, how some things came about, and it gives you something to think about. Is it like one of those things that's kind of, I guess, a little out there? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the reader. But I think in these, especially in this day and age, it's important to challenge your own thoughts and mindset and not stay so narrow-minded, because I think God calls us all to be open-minded within reason, of course, to always look to him for wisdom. Um, because I think in the type of world that we live in, we can't afford to just be narrow-minded and closed off to other things that are happening around us, even if it's not having a direct impact on us. So I know this book is taking me a while to get through, but honestly, it's worth it. I wouldn't trade it for the world because it's given me a glimpse into something that, I haven't experienced, but it gives me a different lens to really understand where our Black brothers and sisters are coming from.
Very true. Lived life experience. Again, going back to where I used to work, I never had the experience of working with African American people, and hearing their life stories. And when I worked at that state facility, that was when I met a whole lot of friends who were African American and of different cultures. And you do your life experiences, your life changes when you hear the stories of people. So I agree with you. You have to expand your horizons. You have to learn more. You have to read more, but you have to live it. You have to go out and be with and be there, because that's how you learn from that experience. But last parting words, Tony. Any words?
Live a life of holiness, be blessed and be true.
That's my line.
Tony, I was waiting for you to chime in, Tony. I know you have a lot to say.
No, you know what's funny is, remember when I mean I don't know if people here listened, but when Edric asked me during the CSB TV, it's like, what do you feel like you can add to this podcast, because I'm helping editing it, and I was just like, nothing. Arnell has this, like, there's nothing I can add to it, and that's kind of how I feel about this. So
Oh,
Tony, I'm not biased or anything, but I think I listened to that episode that you did with St. Paul, and I truly enjoyed that. I mean, I have the attention span of a gnat, but that one was just so interesting to me, and I watched it all. and I listened to everything. And you and Arnell both had really great things to say. So I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Tony.
I do too.
So follow on Instagram, CSB of St. Paul. Is that what their Instagram for that episode? That's my Addy. Thank you. God bless you.
Follow him on YouTube, Tony Pimentel.
That's right. The YouTube version is on there as well. It's edited and looks pretty clean.
Not that it was dirty,
Yeah, correct.
cleaner. Bethany,
Cleaner.
any parting words? Cheers.
But I did break my cork, and so now it's stuck in the. I'm just a mess today. I'm sorry. I cried. I stabbed myself. I broke the cork. I'm done.
We're done. Pretty much, Merlot is not mine. I mean, it's not my fave. Or I'm sorry to the winery of Robert Mondavi. Just gotta say, not my cup of tea. Not my wine. Still looking for my wine. So that's all I have to say.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I'll get there. Kind of too dry. Catherine, any last words while you're standing there against that wall?
She's stuck in the wall again.
Look in the wall. Better watch out. Bernie might be behind there.
Oh my gosh, that meme is out of control. I'm so fed up. Leave that man alone, guys.
I
Leave him
love the
alone.
Bernie meme.
Do you think by the time this releases, the Bernie meme will still be like crazy, or is it
I'm
gonna have
actually
died out
thinking-
by then?
I'm actually thinking that in the thumbnail poster for this, we're gonna put Bernie on there.
Oh my gosh, that GIF I sent you guys, I thought that was cool. That GIF was, I love that GIF when that came out. I don't know what show it's from, but I just thought it was hilarious. The chair and Bernie.
So on that note, we'll never end unless we end. So until the next time, next month, until we come up with more topics to whine about and a different type of wine. Maybe what's the wine for next month? Pinion. How do you pronounce
Pinot
it?
Noir. Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. We are going to
That's
be
his topic.
drinking. We are going to be drinking Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir. Something like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully
And
COVID will be done by then. We'll actually be toasting it by then.
I hope so.
Yeah, I know. We never even got to talk about the vaccine.
Oh, we haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, I think that's in the jar.
You talked about that with Joe. We're good.
That's true.
But it's a different type of discussion because we're gonna have wine with it.
That's true.
See, wine changes.
I don't know. I'll figure something out. But friends, if you guys have any topics that we can whine about, just shoot it our way. Send us a DM at catholic.dad. That's all we have for this episode of Wine with YAM on This Connected. Hopefully you enjoyed our wine and enjoyed Catherine's description of what wine is about. And I hope you guys liked Bethany's overly wine. It was actually tearful. And her Harry Carey attempt of stabbing herself with a wine cork bottle opener thing, and Tony's silence. Awkward silence from the bottom there from Tony. But anyways, if this podcast connected with you guys, send us a DM. Please subscribe to the podcast on the many podcast platforms out there. Also follow us on YouTube. Please subscribe and share that with a friend. There you go. Bethany is almost destroying everything in her screen. So we got to go before we have to actually call 911 to help this girl. Maybe she's had one too many glasses. Yes. Also, don't forget to support the podcast. You can join us and be a patron on our Patreon account. The link for all these things that you guys need to go to is in the bio for This Connected at Catholic.dad. I don't know what I'm saying. I think I've had one too many glasses, but please send us your support. And as always, remember, friends, live a life of holiness. We'll be praying for you Please pray for us. And as always, be blessed and be third. Tony's going to sing this one.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if